Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special Wednesday edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by Ryan Abraham and Shotgun Spratling. We have a fun show for you guys today. We're going to be talking about Todd Orlando. What does his scheme mean for USC, its players? We'll get into it. We'll take a deeper dive during this edition of Tunnel Vision. We'll talk about CJ Pollard announcing his decision to transfer from USC. We'll also dig into National Signing Day. Can you believe it's a week away? I think that shows you how the early signing period is kind of taken over, as well as USC not having the greatest class for 2020. So we'll get into that. As always, you can call us 512-4TUNNEL. Our intern Micah is standing by and screening your calls. Thanks to Micah for that.
Thanks,
you can also
Micah.
tweet at us, #TunnelVision. We already have a tweet lined up.
Wow.
It's pretty funny, for Tunnel Vision. And then as always, wherever you're watching, YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, put your comments, questions, concerns, and we will answer them. Because we had Tunnel Vision just a couple days ago, this is going to be a very question-heavy episode. So bring your A game, guys. I know Jasper Smith always does, but other people can step up as well, too. So that will be fun. But guys, where do you want to start? I listed off a myriad of topics.
Yeah. Let's maybe put big question there in front of your question, because there's a lot of comments. People just making comments, so Keely can see it.
It always helps when you put question in caps.
We'll try to put a bunch of questions up on the screen today. We'll take calls. We'll do all that. Last week we started talking about the Todd Orlando hire and what it means, and then kind of breaking news with the Corey Foreman stuff, and we sort of went down a recruiting rabbit hole and just went all over the place. So we'll try to get into that a little bit more. Maybe just real quick at the top, CJ Pollard, redshirt senior, former four-star out of Sarah High School. He's going to enter the NCAA transfer portal as a grad assistant, like he tweeted out. And I thought, last year, USC
grad
lost.
Assistant?
I mean,
grad
transfer.
I was very confused.
Not a grad assistant, grad transfer. Excuse me. I thought last year, because USC lost so many, the Iman Marshalls of the world, the Marvell Tells, like all these guys that were seniors upperclassmen in the secondary, there would be a good chance for CJ Pollard to kind of get in the mix. He ends up breaking his foot, doesn't take part in spring football, and I think it would have been a good opportunity to show new DB coach Greg Burns what he could do. It just never seemed to work. And just throughout his career, he was just kind of thrown in there, some special team stuff, some spot duty, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't working out. So no big surprise there, no big shock. He's a great kid. Like USC legacy, his dad played at SC. His mom went to SC. So, you wish him the best, and we'll see. We don't know where he's going yet, but he did, let everyone know he's going to transfer.
Yeah. Great kid. Always said hi to me and Dan when we were doing instant analysis. Just a really nice kid. So you always wish those guys the best, for sure.
Yeah. He'll do well. Like USC transfers seem to do pretty well wherever they go. I think,
Some of them do.
Yeah.
Not all of them.
But he'll be well liked wherever he goes.
True. Before we jump into Todd Orlando, I see all the questions flooding in already. Great job, guys. Keep it up. Let's dive deeper into National Signing Day. Now, Shotgun, you declared the 2020 class of recruiting dead on Sunday.
So mean of you.
Do you still stand by that prediction, or do you think that there might be a last-minute surprise for USC?
I mean, they're probably still going to sign a couple of players. I'm just saying, as far as rankings, them moving up and making none of that's going to happen. The big question mark will be, if they get a surprise official visitor this weekend. 5-star running back Zach Evans is still out there. He's had a crazy recruitment. He was committed to Georgia. He signed an NLI with them, and then he was supposed to announce at the Under Armour game. Did not announce. They let him out of the NLI, but he still could end up at Georgia.
Yeah.
He was looking at some other schools. It seems like some other schools have backed away from him. It's just one of those type of recruitments where no one really knows what's going to happen until it finishes. And because he's a 5-star running back, everyone's still really interested. So if USC gets him on campus with all the question marks, hey, maybe there could be a big surprise. Obviously, they've been looking for a running back in this class. The other guy they're looking at is Michael Drennan from Ohio. They would hope to get one of those guys. If they could get both of them, I think they would probably take both of them.
Yeah.
But, that barring some surprise official visits, this weekend is actually going to be more about the 2021 class.
Yeah, the junior stuff and everything. And for USC, the biggest name out there besides who Shotgun mentioned, Jack Eure, the legacy tight end who could maybe end up playing tackle like his dad did at USC. I talked to Brandon Huffman over the weekend, and he's like, yeah, or earlier this week, and he was sort of like, yeah, there's really not, as far as West Coast guys go, Jack's the only 4-star dude around that hasn't signed yet. So there's just not a lot of West Coast bodies at least left that USC can kind of bring in on signing day. So I agree with Shotgun. It'll probably just be a couple of dudes. If you get a Jack Eure, that's fine. You might get a boost in the rankings after the re-rank. 24/7 Sports did earlier this week. USC dropped one spot. They're 59th overall. But if you get another 4-star, you would jump up higher. I mean, it'd probably be in the 40s or something, so it wouldn't be as bad as 59 where it is now. The weird thing was, though, in the 24/7 Sports composite, USC is still 10th in the Pac-12. I think Washington State and Arizona are behind them. But in the 24/7 Sports rankings, if you just look at 24/7 Sports rankings and not composite all of them together, USC is actually last in the Pac-12, so it's kind of crazy. So, yeah, there's still a couple opportunities on signing day to maybe get a big name or two, but I wouldn't be holding my breath if I was a USC fan. And whoever he gets, not going to be the super game changer kind of thing.
Just getting some extra bodies that are quality bodies is important. This class is built on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Why is it built on the offensive line? I feel like I need to point this out every time, but why is it built on the offensive line this year? Why did you have to go get so many people? Because you missed out on your top targets to the previous two classes with Sean Ryan, Jonah Tawanau, both going elsewhere. And then the previous class, you had Penei Sewell, Jackson Carman were both big USC targets. They were finalists in that. They missed out. Those are 4 guys that could potentially be starting for USC next year if they were on campus. At least the 2 older guys would definitely be starting. So that's why they had to go and get so many offensive linemen. Why is your class so small? Because you went out last year, and at the end you really went out and tried to get extra bodies for defensive backs. And, hey, guys like Dorian Hewitt and Kalana McCalla, showed that they can play out there. Jaden Williams. However, did you need to get all of them?
Yeah.
Kind of reaching at the end for some guys that are a little bit lower ranked. Hey, they might have liked them all, but sometimes you have to show a little restraint. You've had 2 cookies already, Ryan.
I don't have any restraint when it comes to cookies.
We don't need to get the 3rd one yet. You can hold off and wait until tomorrow and have, instead of just having 1 cookie tomorrow, if you show a little restraint today, you get 2 each day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how this recruiting class played out, where, why they were like, oh, it's going to be a smaller class. Well, why is it a smaller class?
Yeah.
Because you determined that. So don't just blame it on smaller class and then try to use that as your excuse for why this is a lower ranked class.
I believe the term was big man class. Clay kept saying that phrase.
Big man, yeah.
And the reasons why are because of what they've done in the previous 2 classes. So, but because of that, if you can add a couple of pieces at the end, it's going to be a little bit of a boost at the end, but it's definitely not going to do anything to resurrect this class.
Yeah.
There was a chance for this class to be resurrected, after the season ended until early signing period, but, those pieces fell apart. There was the Bryce Youngs, the Justin Flows, those, they thought they might have a chance at them. It didn't happen. So now what do you do here, and how do you get that 2021 class jump-started? Because you talked about how Jack Eure, there's one guy in the composite top 500 in California, not the top 500 nationally of California players. There's there's 2 that are not signed. That's Jack Eure, and that's Jonathan Vaughn's, Tyler Vaughn's little brother, who is going to sign with UCLA. He was just waiting until this period. But there's no other guys. So that's the top 42 players in California. All but 1 are signed so far, or all but 1 are decided so far.
Yeah.
So, it's not like Huffman said, there's not a lot of guys that are just waiting around, but that's also the case with the 2021 class. I'm going to pull it up in just a second, but, there's just the guys in the 2021 class are already putting out and getting their commitments out there, with Corey Foreman and Bo Collins, obviously, this past weekend, that made their announcements. You have now, I think it's 8 of the top 10, 7 of the top 9 guys are already committed.
Wow.
In California. So,
How many are committed to USC?
2 of them are.
Okay.
So you got Jake Garcia, the 5-star quarterback that was at Narbonne last year. I think he's going to be at La Habra this season. And then you have Pali Naitiote's little brother, Ma, who's going to be at St. John Bosco, who's been committed, I feel like, since he was 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah, he's been committed for quite a while.
But those are 2 of the top 8 players in California. Good start. You also have Jay Toya, a 300-pound trench tank, a defensive tackle, and you got Veltre Jefferson, a 6'4" receiver. So good start. They're ranked number 10 right now. Can you build on it? And that's going to be a big weekend this year because they're going to bring in, Jake Garcia and a number of other local guys to try to, start building some momentum towards that class.
Yeah, you got to not only build on it, but keep that
Yep.
core, that nucleus there. So that'll be something to watch because Bryce Young was a good core for the
Yep.
2020 class, and that fell apart.
Yeah, we mentioned it on the Family Feud podcast.
Plug. It happened. We recorded it.
You guys actually recorded a podcast?
Ta-da!
Wow.
Yes.
So
First of the year? Yeah.
It is. So we mentioned it on the Family Feud podcast, but you look back and USC, the early starts of the 2020 class, you had Bryce Young committed. You also had Chris Hudson at one point committed, the 4-star receiver who ended up going to Oregon, and 4-star receiver Coy Moore from Louisiana was also committed. So there was a decent start to that class as well, and things didn't pan out for them. So let's see what they can do with the 2021 class.
Yes.
Yeah. As far as the 2020 class, though, how big do you think it's going to be? It was a smaller class to begin with. What do you think the final total will be?
It's 12 now. I would guess like 14 or something is what, it maybe goes to 15. I don't know. It just depends.
As far as freshmen, I think you're going to be 14, 15. However, what the initial counters they use still depends on the transfer
portal.
Both
Yeah.
people going in and coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And real quick, I know it's not going to be some glorious signing day. I put this out on the Peristyle. Probably be down there for lunch around USC. I think they'll have their press conference usually 2 or 3 o'clock. Keely, isn't that normally when they do?
Around there, I remember it was different for early signing period because Clay had to go to San Diego that day for holiday.
Right. Doesn't have to do
presser
anything
stuff.
like that.
Yeah.
Probably, kind of. So I think maybe we'll just do a little, USCfootball.com gathering down there. Maybe I talked about the lab. We've done that before, but maybe someplace over in the new village. There's some cool restaurants and stuff there. So if you have any interest, put in the comment item and stuff. We could have a little gathering. Maybe get a staffer or 2 from USC to come over and say hello.
Interesting.
But yeah, so throw it out there. If there's no, we've done some really big signing day party shows and stuff before.
Party shows.
But there was a lot to celebrate. There was always 5 stars and everything. There's really not a whole lot to, but just a little gathering if you want to talk some USC football with some of us and maybe some people that work at USC if we can line them up. Yeah, so let us know. We'll check the message boards on USCfootball.com. We'll post on the Peristyle and the free message board, so even if you're not a subscriber, check it out.
Interesting. As far as the presser goes, how's that going to go if Clay's only signing 2 more people? Is it going to be another barrage of questions about this pretty bad signing class?
I think so, yeah.
Well, there will also probably be questions about Todd Orlando
Yes.
and the new hiring there and
True.
what they're
Good
going to do with some of the other positions maybe. So we might get some clarity on some things even if there's not a lot of action on National Signing Day on Wednesday.
Yeah, and it was pretty limited even on the early signing period. We were in there. It was like in the basement of Heritage Hall or whatever. We were in there, and it was it was kind of a quick. You get to talk to Clay for a little bit, and I think there were some tough questions asked of him, and you got some vague answers that weren't really addressing all the concerns that the people were asking about. But that's Clay. That's kind of what you get. So we'll see what you get this time and how much time we'll get and all that. And if there will be access to a guy like Todd Orlando, or maybe there's another hire between now and then, because there's still, we'll get into that now, but there's still one open spot as far as USC assistant coaches go, because Clancy Pendergast and John Baxter were both let go, and then Joe DeForest took a job at North Carolina State. But USC did add 2 people. They've had Todd Orlando, and they added John David Baker.
Yeah.
So there could be some shuffling around. There's still not, a named special teams coordinator. So he might have some announcements about where those guys will go. But there's just one spot open right now, unless there's some other changes.
Yeah, we have a question from Donald Donaldson who says, any new news on a special teams coach?
The special teams coaches, I haven't heard anything necessarily about what direction they're going, and I think it feels like it might be because they're waiting to see how things kind of play out. Does Johnny Nansen get flipped over to special teams? Do you kind of do it as a little bit of a committee where someone like he's technically the special teams coach, but other people are chipping in and he's still working with linebackers? How much is Todd Orlando? I think it starts with what exactly is going to happen with Todd Orlando as far as, is he the linebackers coach as well?
He's been everywhere. Everywhere he's been the linebackers coach.
Exactly.
So, as the defensive coordinator.
So does that mean that you're going to have an outside linebackers coach again?
Yeah.
And not use them like they did last year, where Joe DeForest had 3 or 4 guys that he was responsible for? If that's the case, then Johnny Nansen could technically be the outside linebackers coach, or you can flip Johnny Nansen. Johnny Nansen is a versatile coach. He's coached running backs at I think at USC as well, if not at Washington. But he was also the special teams coordinator at USC. So he's done some different things on both sides of the ball. So you can do some different things with him if you want to keep him on staff. Does Todd Orlando get to bring in his own staff? Does he bring in somebody else? Does the open position just go to him and they say, get whoever you want, whatever position? Or does he have more say and says, I want to make some changes here and here? I think that there's an assessment period for him.
Yeah.
He got hired. It looked like he was in the building last Thursday, I want to say. So he's had almost a week. So it's not only that he's around the players and he's out recruiting and doing stuff, he's also assessing those other guys that he's working with now. Okay, what do I have in my defensive backs coach? What do I have in Johnny Nansen? What do I have in Chad K? Do I want to keep those guys around if he has that power? And that's the one kind of variable we don't really know, is if he's the one in charge of all the personnel on the defensive side, or if he's going to have any say in that, or if they're just saying, hey, here, you get the one opening and that's it. You don't get a say in the other guys that are already there. I don't know. Those are it's kind of up in the air. What exactly is his power and how much control he has of the defense of staff?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think there's some domino. The first domino was getting a defensive coordinator. Now, how's he going to fill out that staff? I know, like a guy like Johnny Nansen could flip over. To me, with all the issues that were going on with special teams and how involved John Baxter was in practice length and the number of scholarships were available, I think, to me, we always talk about hiring people from the outside for certain things. I think you need to hire an outside special teams coordinator. The more I think about it, people, we haven't talked about it a lot, but I think at this point, I'd like you to bring in someone from the outside with a fresh perspective on how you're going to approach special teams. If you're going to use a full-time position on that, which most schools do at this point, because you have the 10th, you have that extra one. So I think bringing someone from the outside that has their own philosophies and what they do and kind of incorporate that, I think would be better, because there were so many resources being dedicated to special teams. And if you keep someone from the inside running it, you're probably going to keep having all those resources there. And I'm not saying it's the wrong way to use those resources, but I think a different, fresh perspective would probably be better.
So you're anti the Johnny Nansen method? Because Shotgun and I were arguing, and we've said this a lot during the season, if you're going to dedicate that much time to special teams and play as poorly as they did, does it make a difference to just kind of scrap that area and kind of do the basics and then hope that your special teams units don't make mistakes? Like, is it worth dedicating a whole new thing to it like we've seen?
Well, I would say, like, if Johnny Nansen's going to take it over and you just keep running the same sort of systems that were there, I don't think you're going to get much change. I mean, he would have to have, hey, we're going to cut special teams practice in half. We're not going to be offering kickers.
That's what I'm suggesting.
And 3 long snappers, scholarships, and all this kind of stuff. Like, there's going to be 3 kickers on scholarship next year, if I'm not mistaken.
Potentially.
So, yeah, I think so if he was going to go to Clay Helton and say, hey, I'll run special teams, but I'm going to run it this way and not just kind of continue the way things were going, I'm not saying it was right or wrong or whatever. I just think you need a different look at it. It just seems so resource intense, intense. There's just so many resources were dedicated towards special teams, and you get someone in with a different look at it, I think it would be beneficial to the team.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. We were on the topic of recruiting, and before we go too far away from that, I want to take some calls because they are talking about recruiting.
Okay.
First up, let's go to Dave from Iowa. Hello, you are live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, Tunnel Vision. I have 2 questions. Ryan, on Sunday's show, you ranted for about 20 minutes of how terrible USC recruiting is. Do you think that's probably, you saying that is probably going to be affecting the recruits that are watching this? And second question, where do you see USC ending up in terms of pure talent rankings? I know during the season you said top 5 talent. Where do you see them finishing off after this recruiting class? Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the call. And yeah, great question. As far as USC's been number 4 the last 2 years, I still think USC's going to be up there close to the top. I think they'll still be the most talented team in the Pac-12. 2021 might be the more of a fall-off year, I think. But there's just not going to be as many of those, the Adoree Jacksons that you just, like the guys that would always end up at USC that were 5 stars. The last 2 classes, we haven't really seen that. Now, you got Brew McCoy and Chris Steele to transfer last year, so there's a couple of them. You still had, like, the Amon-Ra St. Browns and all those things, but as those guys start to drop off, like the Tyler Vaughns, who was a former 5-star, things like that, I think that you're going to see a drop-off, and Oregon is really on the way up. So we don't know yet. My guess is Oregon won't pass USC yet, as far as like looking at those rankings.
Well, I think you're going to see they'll probably drop a few spots, but they didn't lose a lot of players.
Yeah.
So because of that, now the thing is, you're replacing 5-star John Houston, 5-star Michael Pittman with who are you bringing in this class?
Yeah,
They're 3 and 4 stars, and you're losing higher end guys, and the rankings on the new guys that are coming in are much lower. So you'll see a little bit of a drop this year. Maybe they're 7th or 8th or something like that. But then if they don't recover in this 2021 class, you can see a big drop, I think. I think you can see them drop, to 15, 20 or somewhere, which is the 15th or 20th roster in the country terrible? No.
But compared to what USC usually always is, which is top 5.
And if you don't have 1, 2, or 3 coaching staff in the country, then you're never going to win with 15 or 20 talent.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
As far as the first part of the question, this does come up a lot, and I think it's an interesting topic we can talk about. And
Yeah.
Our job here, we're not trying to, we're not part of the team. We can't recruit for USC. We got to tell you what we think is real, and I think the reason we have the audience we do is because we're objective and we're telling you like it is. We're not going to tell you that this is this offensive line class is the greatest offensive line class I can remember. And then you're like, oh, I feel really good about myself. And I don't know, is a recruit going to watch that and feel, I want to commit to USC? I just don't think what we're saying is going to be very influential as far as what recruits are picking in. I mean, as far as how important that would be, it's much more important to know that Clay Helton is just, he's lost 12 games over the last 2 years with the number 4 roster in the country. Like, things like that are much more important. I think if we were disingenuous and just ignored all of the problems, people would stop watching and listening because it's just, they're like, you guys are lying to us. You're just making up stuff.
Yeah.
And 2, I think if you want change, if you want the team to be better, people like us that are saying things that are like, we point out, hey, this is wrong. You shouldn't be doing this. Why is this way? This is the worst recruiting class in USC history. That's something that gets the attention of the athletic department, and they know, hey, we're on notice. Like, we can't recruit like this anymore. People are calling us out. So I think it's not part of our job to make the team better, but when we have the potential to do that when you point out flaws and issues that we see with the team. We've seen it before. We've seen them change the way they do things because of a story that one of us might write about an observation that we've made, and like, wow, look at this. Or, Shotgun going through every special teams play and counting the players and saying, hey, there was only 9 guys on that PAT. I mean, would you have known that otherwise? So, you could say, well, Shotgun, you're just bagging on USC, telling them they don't have 9 players, but they did only have 9 players, and so that's something that could be called out, and it's something that could be addressed maybe for the next practice or things like that. That's just my thoughts. I don't know what you guys think.
I cover recruiting for this site. I cover recruiting for the Los Angeles Times as well. I have not had any recruit tell me that they watched the show specifically. Now, I have baseball coaches that have told me, oh, yeah, I've checked it out and do this, that have no interest in USC football necessarily. We have seen that, through seeing who comments and stuff. Warren G has been on here. We've had actual USC coaches and USC staff members and some opposing coaches that'll watch our show. However, we haven't really seen any recruits show up, popping up the names and stuff of who's viewing it. So I don't think this is the particular show they're looking at. However, I will give you a couple of shows that they do watch. One of them is called the College Football Playoff National Championship. Another one is called the NFL Draft.
Yeah.
And it's not what they hear about USC, it's the absence of USC in either of those and in either the conversations around either of those that I think it's much more appealing or telling to them than anything we say on this show.
Yeah, because my point was going to be we don't affect anything on the field. USC went 5-7, whether or not we were talking about them or not, and that's what recruits cared about. They care about how the team plays, and like Shotgun said, what that team can do for them and their future. So, yes, we say things, but it's not going to be, hey, I talked to this recruit, I watched television, USC, they're out for me like that. We don't have that much impact.
But there's people talking about, well, you're negative fans on Twitter or blah blah blah. I mean that you can argue like that's, but that the culture or the atmosphere around like USC on the internet, on our website, on Twitter, and things like that is created by basically 10 years of horrible decisions by this athletic department. Now they have a new athletic director. They're going to try to reverse some of these decisions and fix a lot of these problems that are going on. But the problems are still, they're still there and they need to be fixed. And the fans have a right to be upset. This is not a team that should have lost 12 games over the last 2 years. No matter how you cut it, whatever you slice it, this was the most talented team in the Pac-12 for 2 years running, and they lost half of their games. And you can't do that.
So Michael Ford is someone who's actually brought this up a lot in our comments and whatnot, and he's going off in the comment section right now. He was basically saying that Lynn Swann kept Clay Helton, but it was the media that kept Clay on the hot seat, and that affected recruiting.
Who wrote
Michael
that?
Ford.
Michael Ford. So we talk about what the hot seat is. I mean, if Clay Helton is losing a whole bunch of games, that's why he's on the hot seat. It's not because the media didn't put him on the hot seat. If we put Nick Saban on the hot seat for losing 2 games, you could say the media has put him on the hot seat. When you go 5-7, you're on the frickin' hot seat. Like you have the most talented team in the conference, and you go 5-7, and you get blown out by mediocre teams. Like, yes, that's why you're on the hot seat. Now, is there an official hot seat? No, I mean there's no there's
no literal throne anyway.
There's nothing that we know of, but every major publication that talks about it, it's not us or it's everyone would say that because there's an expectation at USC that you win a whole bunch of games, not win 5 games, not win 8 games, win 9, 10, 11 games and win a conference championship and win big Rose Bowls and all those things and go to national championship games. USC's never been to the college football playoff. So we didn't put Clay Helton on the hot seat. His results put him on the hot seat. We could point out, look, they have more 5-star players than the rest of the Pac-12 combined, and they still lose 7 games. Like, no, that shouldn't be happening. You have to look at the coach at that point. And everyone around Clay Helton has been fired. His bosses, the people under him, everyone's been fired except Clay. So all those things are why Clay Helton is on the hot seat because you can't keep firing everyone around him and not fire the main guy. So I would disagree with you that we are the ones that put him on the hot seat. His results put him on the hot seat, which is something talked about in the media.
Expectations, precedent, and results are what creates a hot seat. If you're at Washington State and you go 5-7, it's not the same as at USC. If you recruit and you're the 120th ranked class consistently, you don't have the same expectations that are at USC. There's a precedent, though, built when you get 4 and 5 stars that you're usually going to be competing for it. National championships, at least Pac-12 championships, and that's not what USC's done the last 2 seasons. So it comes to that. And then once you set those expectations, they can grow and grow and grow. And then you look at Alabama this year, and there were a lot of fans that wanted to put Nick Saban on the hot seat. And maybe there's some people in the Alabama administration that were going, why are we spending all this money if we're not going to be making the college football playoff every year? So
literally every year. He's been every year but one.
And there were people going, oh, is Saban done at Alabama? Maybe, is his time over type of thing. It's like, calm down, it's 1 year. The media wasn't doing that. That was more the fans, and the expectation that he's built there is so great that you have you step back 1 year and you see what can happen there just with those expectations. But USC, as a blue blood program, as a program with how many national championships? A lot.
11, yeah.
So, that's the expectation at USC. And when you've not done that for, over a decade-long period, it grows and grows and grows, and that's what the hot seat is created from, not necessarily from us saying, this is not what they should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, we could do every tunnel vision, every podcast, every story we write, and never say Clay Helton is on the hot seat. It wouldn't change anything. Like, the fans would still want to fire him. Like, we didn't create that. So I would disagree. Keely, do you have any thoughts on it? Or no?
I'm going to jump in while we're addressing things.
Okay.
Sean is someone on Facebook who says this all the time, but he was saying that it seems like you guys follow the CBS narrative, Pac-12 down and SEC great, which is false. And he said you guys also need to point out the differences in the easy schedule the ACC and SEC have when saying USC has never been in the playoffs.
Okay, sure. CBS has no creative control. I mean, we are as far removed from CBS as you are. Like, there's like no, it's really, there's nothing that happens. And they're not allowed really to tell us what to say or what to do. I mean, this is completely on our own. Like, no one in 24/7 Sports really has a show like this, like maybe one or two sites or whatever. So there's no CBS narrative. I do a Pac-12 podcast. I talk about the Pac-12 every week, and we'll bag on the Pac-12. It's not because of CBS or anything. It's because of what we see.
And Larry Scott.
I mean, when you're talking about tens of millions of dollars per school per year, it makes a huge difference. And there's, USC, upgraded the facilities, and they were pretty cool 10 years ago. They're kind of out of date now, and there's not really a lot that's going to be changing anytime soon. You're seeing, I think all the schools in the Pac-12 are suffering, and it's definitely different. The Pac-12 does have a 9-game conference schedule. The SEC and the ACC do not. I talk about that all the time, but I'm saying the Pac-12 should go to an 8-game schedule, and they're refusing to. So do you want to play with the big boys? You can't give all these schools this extra loss every year and have an extra road game and all of that. And the ACC and the SEC does not. I talk about that openly, but I'm not blaming them for gaming the system. I'm blaming the Pac-12 for, well, Oregon State would like an extra trip to Los Angeles to recruit, so we're going to do a 9-game schedule. Like, no, that's stupid. And I think for USC, they have to act like they're the Alabama or the Ohio State of the Pac-12, and they haven't for at least the last decade. I think Mike Garrett was a little more forceful. I think Mike Bone, and he's already met with Larry Scott, I think they're going to try to assert a little bit more strength from USC. I have a great story by John Wilner, if you remember back in the 70s when it was the Pac-8, and they wanted to expand to the Pac-10 and add Arizona and Arizona State. And USC's president, I forget who the president was, and the UCLA's president, they want him. Stanford was being like, nah, we don't, we want more academic research institutions and blah, blah, blah. And the president of USC goes in and goes, all right, we'll leave. And it was basically like, we're adding them or we're gone. And they're like, oh, okay. USC hasn't done anything like that since then, basically. So you want to see USC go, look, we would like to make the playoff. This whole 9-game schedule thing stinks. We're never going to do a home and home again because we want 7 home games in the Pac-12, so we can't schedule Texas home and home anymore. Screw that. We want 8 games and just make it happen. And I think, so yeah, I've been very critical of the Pac-12, but a lot of it's Larry Scott and the leadership there. But we talk about all those things all the time. The SEC and the ACC are just way better at gaming the system than the Pac-12 is. And the Pac-12 seemed to be more focused on parity. And that was my question to Larry Scott a few years ago, and he still talks about that. I wasn't able to. I told Dan Weber to ask the question for me, like at the conference championship game, and would you rather have parity or an elite team in the playoff? And he said parity, and it was like, and he's still paying for that, which is like, no, that's not what you want. Like, that's what USC. I mean, the Pac-12 was focused on is parity and not. And the SEC, they don't give a crap about parity. They want to get Alabama or LSU or someone into the playoff.
Or 2 teams in the playoff.
Or 2 teams in the playoff, yeah. Georgia, whoever. Like, they're like, look, that's what, and the Pac-12 needs to focus on that. And if you really care about that, you can't do this 9-game conference schedule crap.
Alrighty, let's continue in the caller queue.
Or there needs to be a stipulation that everyone goes to.
Yes.
It just needs to be even across the board.
Right.
And instead of hurting yourself and trying to set the precedent, you need to be the top tier program or conference to set the precedent, and the Pac-12 hasn't been that. So when you try to go to 9 games, like, hey, everybody else, you guys do 9 games too. Yeah, come on. You're not coming, are you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Keely, I got a good analogy. I know she wants to wrap up. If you're in a battle royale, there's 5 of you in there, and what are the rules? Like, okay, 3 of you can carry guns, and you're allowed to carry guns or knives. What do you want? And 3 of the people grab knives, and the other 2 are like, we got guns. So then, it's up to the 3 people. Like, you could have got guns, and you chose knives. So the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the Pac-12, they're playing 9 games. That's on them. They don't have to. So they're letting the SEC and the ACC bring guns to a knife fight.
Sure.
You like that? Just made that one up. Bam.
Nice. Let's go to our live caller now. I believe it is Bobby in LA. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, Keely, thank you. I must tell you, this has been my favorite Tunnel Vision. Shotgun using a food analogy reminds me I got to go to Trader Joe's and get chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, very good.
Couple things I wanted to talk about. For number one is, since we're in basketball season now, Shotgun, I'm very disappointed after 20 games in the development of Isaiah Mobley. I find Andy Enfield in his coaching, Isaiah Mobley should have been more of a bigger force after 20 games than he's been so far. Number 2 point, Todd Orlando. It's amazing. He does well the first year on a few of his stops from other coaches. Year 3 in Texas, he gets fired, and the recruiting in years 2 and 3, while he was the defensive coordinator, seemed to have been lax. And the last point, what I don't understand is the 10th coach. There's nobody on the staff that can coach. Take a page out of Andy Enfield and hire the 10th coach being a high school coach. Who does Corey Foreman love most at his high school? Hire his coach to be a recruiting coordinator and give him the 10th job and find out at what high school is the best recruiter who work locally, because there's nobody on the staff that can recruit if you really look at it. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Bobby. It doesn't really work as well in football as basketball, where you can hire a coach and he has 2 sons that are 5-star guys or whatever.
Because basketball, you can make much more of an impact as an individual because there's less people on the court, and just you can take over a game individually. Whereas when there's 22 people, harder to do. It would be like in soccer, trying to get a star. They can do a little bit more, but you still have 10 other players on the field. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. And plus the NCAA made it harder for people to do similar situations like that and create kind of pipelines to certain schools and like that. Now, if USC were to hire a coach as a full-time paid coach, then there's no restrictions on it. However, if they hire a 7-on-7 coach or parent, because you had the Jim Harbaughs or Nick Sabans that were bringing in, hey, mom's going to be the secretary now. Well, you know where I'm going? Going where mom's going. Yeah. So that makes it, they changed that rule up a little bit there a couple years ago, which has had some different impacts. But as far as Isaiah Mobley, to start with that.
5 seconds. This is not a basketball show.
He had a foot injury, actually, in the summer, and it took him a little bit of time to get going during the season. So I think you're actually seeing him start to progress now. It was for infield, and the coaching staff was figuring out the role for him. Can you play 3 guys that are 6'9", 6'10", 6'11" together? It didn't work out. They tried to do that early in the season, didn't necessarily work out. So now they're figuring out the role a little bit more for him. Maybe they give him a little bit more minutes as the season progresses. In place of Nick Rakocevic, or resting Big O a little bit more. Those type of things. We'll see. He's played really well the last 3 weeks, I would say.
Yeah, and Todd Orlando, I don't think he was the most dynamic recruiter himself, but he had some guys on staff that were. I thought they had a really talented secondary. They had guys they brought in. It's just the last year they lost a whole bunch of seniors and got a whole bunch of guys injured. So I think that was one of the big issues with last year. Real quick on, thanks for the call. Trojan the Barber said, terrible analogy. He didn't like my analogy, but
it got some mixed reviews, not going to lie.
That's okay. And Blair Angulo, who,
shouts to Blair, who we still want on the show.
Well, he's saying that you're ignoring him, but he said, he told me to quit being biased. But I talked to Blair this week, and he seems like, Keely doesn't put any of my comments up or anything. So
Blair, you have to come on Facebook or YouTube. That's where I see. Ryan is the Periscope monitor, so direct all your complaints to @Ryan Abraham. That's all I have
You
to
could,
say.
but we do want to get Blair on the show. We talked about maybe after signing day or something. So
Fun.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Going back to Todd Orlando, Chris Trevino was on our Family Feud episode that will be out in the next couple of days. He brought up a great point. The Todd Orlando, and one of the things that maybe you saw, and maybe you saw the difference, was Todd Orlando came in, and there were some big time players already there. You had Puna Ford as a nose tackle in the middle. You had some good linebackers. And then when those guys left after the first year, now you need to recruit and fill those positions. And maybe they didn't have exactly the guys they needed for his defense. So maybe it would have recovered this next season after a couple of recruiting classes where they get the guys that fit the system he wanted to run a little bit better. You didn't really get to see because of how quickly they made a change there, and that kind of happens sometimes with the win now mentality that a lot of schools have, or NFL teams, and just in general, where if you don't give coaches long enough to implement their stuff and get the people that fit into their system, then sometimes they can't have that immediate success, or it's there and then it's gone. And that might have been a case with Todd Orlando where he had some players to begin with, but then when you lost some of those to graduation, it didn't have necessarily the guys to fill in the same spots that would make his defense run. I think at USC, I think he's got some guys there that'll fit in well, and I think he could be really good this season, and you might see something similar if they don't start recruiting, to get guys that fit if he's here for a few years.
Yeah, and I think we got to talk about Todd Orlando.
We're going to jump into Todd Orlando. Let's run through. I have two more callers, and then we're going to do a deep dive on Todd Orlando. I just want to get it through, and you guys are a little chatty today. So let's go to our next caller, who wouldn't tell Micah his name. Shame on him. You are almost... Now you're live on television. Hello. Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good. How are you? So my question, I have two questions. Well, 1 point and one question.
Okay.
One question, the question I have is, clearly Clay Helton does not know how to build a winning culture at USC. It's clear. So when is the athletic director going to step in and help him, because he needs help? It's very apparent to everyone that this man does not know what he's doing. So that's the first question. The second question is, when is USC going to start changing the narrative? Because what they're selling, no one is buying. No one of import, no recruits of import are buying what they're selling. So it's clear you have a branding issue with respect to what USC is perceived as recruits, and you have a leadership issue, because clearly they have decided that they're going to go with Clay Helton. So, when I hired people, when I was working and I still have a company and I hire people, if I find someone who I'm going to retain, I have to put them on a development program. Clay Helton needs a development program. And if he does not fulfill those development requirements, he needs to go. So that's it.
All right. Thanks for the question there. Yeah, I think for college head coaches, there's not really a development program. We had, I think on a podcast, we had questions about, hey, is there some school you can go to learn to be a coach? Like, no, you get hired to be, like, you don't become the CEO of Coke and you're like, yeah, that guy's not very good at it. Is there a CEO course around here he could take? Like, that doesn't seem to work.
The development program should have been Kim Helton, his father.
Yeah.
Who's a head coach, has been a football coach for a long time. However, to give Clay Helton, I don't know if it's one example is that everyone above him is not leaders that he could follow.
Yeah.
It's not like
he's had terrible leaders above him.
Yeah, it's not like
his bosses have been terrible.
He's got this great CEO that's 40 years in the business, has been terrific. No, it's two athletic directors that don't know what the hell they're doing, have never done it before, coming in, that are best known for some of their failures, actually. Then it makes it that much more difficult to grow as a person.
Yeah, it's beneficial for him, his job status, like having incompetence ahead of him, but it's not really helped him do his job.
Yeah, and I think leadership is an issue. Creating that culture starts even above Clay Helton. It's not the culture of USC football. It's the culture of USC athletics that has been a much bigger issue. That's why you have the FBI has been around multiple times, multiple investigations there. It's not just the culture of the athletics department, though. It's the entire university. How many scandals have there been in the last 8 years at USC? So it starts at the very top and works its way down. But for Clay Helton, he doesn't have anyone to look above. Now, if the athletic department was, a perfect, run organization, then maybe he is getting better. Ideally, and it shouldn't ever be this way, but you shouldn't be learning on the job as the USC head coach. We've said that many a time. But ideally, you do have someone to learn from. You should always be learning in life, just in general. And if you have someone above you that is a good boss, you are going to be learning from them. I've been
Clay was
fortunate.
learning from Sark, Kiffin, Pat Hayden, and Lynn Swan. It's like what everyone's fired. So
Not ideal. No, the one positive there should be his offensive should have been better because of Kiffin and Sark.
Yeah.
But you take out. You look at the overall general thing, there's this one little tiny positive, and the rest is all negative.
Yeah.
So it's hard for someone like that to grow. So I guess you give him a –
No, I think Mike Bohn's trying to help. I think they're adding recruiting staff. My guess is, and I've said this before, and some people are like, "Oh, you're just being a shill for the new ads and stuff." From talking to them, it seems like they get it that there's a big mess in the athletic department, and they're trying to clean that up. There's a lot of issues, though. The president has to address a lot of issues. I know she's not very popular right now. The athletic director has to address a lot of issues. He's not very popular right now. I completely disagree with his decision to bring Clay Helton back, like most of the USC fans out there. But I think they are trying to fix things. There's just so many problems. And their decision was it's better to fix everything around Clay Helton and then kind of address that later, which I think was a big mistake. I think that was the biggest problem you had to fix. And I feel like they were weighing the pros and cons, and they're like, well, it's not the ideal time to get a coach. But I think you're seeing now, like with the recruiting stuff, it's just going to be really hard to have like a third year of a, quote unquote lame duck head coach there. And if you don't go out and be competitive or beat Alabama and, you don't beat Oregon on the road or Notre Dame and all that stuff, like it's just going to be really hard for fans to get behind this team that if they see the same things over again.
To the caller's point about branding and the PR message, I did think it was interesting in the rollout of Todd Orlando. They were very upfront about if you practice soft, you play soft, and like the difference in practicing and physicality. And I think they quoted it in one of their tweets. And to me, that was interesting because that's kind of admitting that you have a problem when no one really has admitted that there's a problem with practicing, at least in the coaching realm of things. So it was a weird duality where it's like, okay, your social media team is kind of being aware of things, but are the coaches going to admit to that at some point? It was interesting.
Yeah. It's like you're going into the sixth year or whatever, Clay Helton, like you had half a year and then and now you're like, you know what? We should probably tackle on practice. Like, I mean, that's one of those things is that really going to change? We'll have to wait and see in the spring.
And also with the branding, I don't think the schools do anything wrong there. I don't think that they're accentuating something that's just a terrible idea. I just think when you have a poor product, it's hard to brand anything. If you go out and get as seen on TV and it just sucks, then it doesn't matter what branding you do to try to make it sell if it's just a terrible product.
Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty, let's go to the last caller in the queue, and then we're going to get to Todd Orlando. This is John from Eugene, Oregon on recruiting. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
What's good, Tunnel Vision? Ducks from up here in Eugene. I just
Wow.
want to say thank you for keeping Clay Helton. Can you please keep Clay Helton? And on top of that, hey, Ryan, Shotgun, Keely, I sent your video from Sunday to all the recruits. So they're getting a taste of what real USC fans are. Have a good one.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. I think that's our first trolley-ish.
It's funny. I was talking to several recruiting analysts, and one of the common things when we were talking, because Oregon's been recruiting really well, they probably complained about the Oregon fan base more than anything about how it's one of those things like, yeah, it's pretty funny, and they're like, how many championships has that team won? But Oregon's doing very well right now, and it's kind of creepy if you're going to be sending videos to recruits. So
Number one rule with recruits is if you are not a staff member at a university or a media member, don't recruit, don't tweet recruits. It's pretty simple.
That's an NCAA violation.
It's actually an NCAA violation. You just committed for Oregon, but whatever.
I think he was alluding to the whole conversation we had about recruits watching our show. Yes. Okay.
But listen to the podcast of champions, John.
Plug.
Yeah.
Todd Orlando, getting into this a little bit deeper. First off, for a layman, how would you describe this defense and what it's going to bring to USC?
Yeah, it's a multiple front. There's like a 3-4 kind of thing. They use the 4-eye where they would bring in their defensive ends and come on the inside shoulder of the tackles. They've used that at times. I think that you'll see more of like kind of a rover safety, where you're like a linebacker thing where they're kind of interchangeable, where they can go around. We've seen USC do that, similar things like that in the past. It's a pretty aggressive scheme. I think it frees up the linebackers a lot. So sometimes when you're tying up those defensive linemen in the center, like it gives the linebackers more of an opportunity to blitz and get the quarterback. So I think it's an interesting. He has some interesting concepts that he uses there. Talking to people at Texas, I know there's some of the fans weren't happy, but the people that covered him that I talked to were all pretty high on him. And I think they had legit reasons, like if the defenses weren't ranked very high, some of the reasons why, like talking about 8 or 9 guys graduating and then 8 or 9 guys getting injured all last year. And by the end of the year, they were playing a lot better. But there was also some criticisms where he took some pass rushing guys and put them maybe too far inside the tackles and taking away some of their strengths. And, some of the defensive linemen maybe wouldn't like that. It was helping the linebackers more. They were getting free. He kind of let those guys go a little bit looser and outside the tackles later in the season, and it opened up and they got a whole bunch of sacks. And they continued to do the same thing in the bowl game against Utah, even though Todd Orlando wasn't there. Try to look at some of the stuff he does analytically. I talked to David Bartu, and we put this in the War Room last week, but I'll give you some tidbits on it. He's with Matrix Analytical Solutions, and they're basically a company that will be a consultant for universities to hire coaches based on like analytical data. And one of the things he talked about is pairing your offensive defensive coordinator. And it's not easy to pair somebody. Like you could look at your ranking as the Army defensive coordinator. When you face 40 plays a game, it's really not as hard. If you play in the Big 12 and you're facing 85, 90 plays a game, it's very different. So you want to pair somebody with a guy like Graham Harrell. And there's a lot of the details of what he said in the War Room. You can check it out. But he really liked the pair. He said Todd Orlando would have been a tier 1 guy. He actually tweeted out, USC should go after Todd Orlando early on in the process. And then it didn't look like he got the job at Texas Tech. So he likes to hire. He's just pairing him up with a guy like Graham Harrell. He thinks is going to work really well. So there's people that I talked to that were that are experts in their field that were really high on a guy like Todd Orlando. And if he does have a really good first year, I mean that's pretty much what you want for Clay Helton because you just don't know how long you're going to be around there anyway. So with the talent on this team, the offense is going to be good. I think the defense has got a good chance to be pretty good this year, just mixing things up with Todd Orlando over Clancy Pendergast.
I think some of the schematic things you talked about were really just last year. I tried to look back and try to read maybe an article from like multiple years of his coaching, like when he was doing well, and try to take themes from it a little bit more than necessarily where they were lining up the defensive ends, because I think he's a guy that has actually adapted to the players he has much more so than necessarily what Clancy Pendergast was doing at USC previously. So I think that's what he was doing last year. They ran some 3-2-6 last year. They've done some different things with that, where they use dime packages and whatnot. But I think the common themes is aggressiveness, and trying to create confusion. And oftentimes he does best when there are some elite linebackers, when the linebackers can play really well. So it's a linebacker maybe centered defense where the linebackers have to make big plays, and if they do, then the defense overall has a much bigger impact. But I think one of the biggest things is creating confusion. So the 3-down fronts that they have, usually with any 3-down front that you have, whether it's a 3-4, a 3-3-5, a 3-2-6, you're going to bring a 4th pass rusher on almost every play. Almost every play there's going to be 4 pass rushers. That's why it's called a blitz when you bring 5, because the general amount is 4. So the ability to create confusion is where is that fourth guy coming from?
Yeah.
And that's in a traditional 3-4 defense like the Steelers ran for years and years and years because you had 4 linebackers and one of the 4 could be coming so that the offensive lineman's head are on a swivel the entire time. I think that's what Todd Orlando does well. Now, can you get the USC linebackers up to speed? Can you create opportunities where a guard or something is looking this way and then suddenly he has to whip his head back because now Palaie and Itiote is coming through the middle and he has to now try to pick him up. That's you create an advantage because his shoulders are turned. Now he's not just squared up waiting on him. Those type of things, can you create those advantages for your players and particularly your playmakers to where you can be aggressive but still create that confusion? And, sometimes when you create confusion, someone just comes free.
Yeah.
And you've seen that with USC's offensive line where, they play great, for, 79 of the 80 plays. But, when you have one time when a guy just comes completely free, the quarterbacks are usually in trouble.
Yeah.
So can you do some of that? And I think that's been one of the calling cards of Todd Orlando's defense is being aggressive, but also creating confusion and being linebacker-centric. So I think those 3 things, all play up to this talent that is returning for USC's defense. And I think they have – I mentioned this on Family Feud, but I think there's 4 special players in the middle of the defense. You have Jay Tufele, Drake Jackson on the defensive line. You have Palaie and Itiote in the middle, and Talanoa Hufanga behind that. That's 4 special players, elite talents. Can you put them in the positions where their talent will show through instead of Palaie and Itiote at the beginning of last season struggling to diagnose what was going on, was inside or outside run? Can you simplify enough, or can you put them in positions where they're straightforward or they're doing certain things that accentuate their skill sets?
Keith had a question we had kind of talked about last week. Which player will benefit the most from Todd Orlando that Clancy didn't get the full potential out of? You mentioned Palaie and Itiote. That was the name we both brought up, and it was interesting. You talked about this is he coaches linebackers. This is more of a linebacker focused defense. Would you say Clancy's was more of a secondary kind of focused defense, or how would you? Or I don't know if it was anything.
So I want to ask Clancy, what would you prefer having on the field? I was kind of questioning, what they called their base defense when he first got to USC was having 3 true down linemen, 3 defensive tackles, 2 outside rushers, whether it be a stand-up, outside linebacker or a guy with a hand in his dirt, didn't matter. And then, linebackers and, your 2 linebackers and 4 defensive backs. But they were in nickel
like
90% of the time, if not more. And so I never understood why that was called base for one. But so I asked him, I was just, what would you prefer having on the field? And he gave me the classic coach speak, well, it depends on what the other team's doing. I'm like, no, just a bland slate. What would you rather have? And he said, I'd rather have speed.
Yeah.
So that's why they were in the nickel so much more, is he would rather have speed chasing down. He would rather not get beat by someone being faster around the edge or whatever it may be, rather than being bulky in the middle and stopping the run type thing. So I think, yes, I think that lends to saying, it's was more of a DB centric. But I wouldn't say that it was that just because they didn't use dime. Very rarely, maybe like 3 plays in the last 3 years, I want to say. But they was just nickel all the time. And when you're in the same look all the time, it takes away a little bit of the creative things you can do. Whereas if you're in 3-2-6 and then suddenly you're in a nickel and then suddenly you're in a 3-4, like you can just mix up and do some different things. So maybe we'll see some variety with USC's defense a little bit more with and creativity. But then that goes back to, is it simple enough where the players can immediately get it and just be attacking?
Right.
So it's the give and take there.
You might see a little bit. Remember when Deion Bailey was playing and he kind of had some roaming capabilities, or Sua Cravens. We didn't really see much of that.
And those guys were linebackers.
Right. Yeah.
Linebackers. Yeah.
So I think you'll see a little bit of that, more of that, where they're just like these playmaker guys instead of like a cover nickel or whatever. So that be what, and that's fun. Like, you want to see just college players that are good out there kind of roaming around doing what they need to do, and guys like that could really do that. So we kind of got away from that a little bit the last couple of years.
And there's been talk about Todd Orlando's defense being a positionless defense. That was really brought up after the Georgia game because of guys can do multiple things. They can go forward, then go backward. They don't just do one thing at all times, and I think that kind of plays into it. Can your outside linebackers pass rush but also be guys that drop in coverage? A guy like Drake Jackson, he can do that.
What
So
happens to Drake Jackson in this type of scheme?
I think it depends on what you actually run. So like you talked about, that was one of the defense. They've done 3-2-6. He's done in the past just true 3-4. Even before, I think before he got with Tom Herman, he was pretty much a 4-3 guy with
so,
UConn.
yeah.
So he's done different things. I think it's going to be an assessment period of looking at tape, seeing what they did well, didn't do well, trying some things out in spring ball before you ever get to figuring out what the actual defense is going to be. I don't know that he's going to come in, and it's usually best for head coaches, or not head coaches, but any coach, is you come in and assess what you have and then try to figure out what's the best game plan from there.
Yeah, Periscope mentioning Solo and Solomon Tuliaupupu and
There's still TBD.
Raymond Scott. Yeah, I mean, those guys. There's some potential there that you might, guys that weren't. No, he was injured. Solomon was, but guys that were injured or guys that just weren't getting much run, like Scott or whatever. You might see a lot more of them in this defense.
Guys that you think are tweeners, don't know exactly what's the best position for them, might be really good in this defense, because if you can do multiple things, that could get you an opportunity to be on the field maybe a little bit earlier.
What about Wale? He might have been good with them. So
I think Wole should have just been a true defensive end the entire time. And that just wasn't really a position in the USC defense at that time, unfortunately for him.
Yeah. The biggest question of all, we've asked a million times, but can a defensive coordinator bring enough change, the change that Clay Helton needs in order to keep it going?
I mean, I think the culture still starts from the top, and I don't think the athletic director can do. I mean, you can make some changes though to practice, and I think that if Todd Orlando comes in and you're seeing more hitting in practice, you're seeing more tackling to the ground. I think Dan Weber talked about what Iowa was doing. They were tackling to the ground even in Shell's days and stuff, where there's a certain technique you would do it. Just bringing that more a sense of physicality to practices, that it's not a shock to the system when you actually have to tackle somebody on Saturdays. I think those changes can all be made, but it's still Clay Helton's team. So I think you can make some changes, but I don't think you're going to change the entire culture by bringing in a new defensive coordinator.
Yeah. In terms of defensive staff, we've gotten many questions about Chris Claiborne. Any more thoughts on that? I know we've addressed that already, but
We talked about it in the war room a little bit. Gerard, I think, put an update on the peristyle yesterday or today or something like that. I don't think there's a whole lot of communication there yet, but that would be an interesting thought bringing him in. But you wouldn't bring him if you're bringing him in. Johnny Nanson's either coaching special teams or what. But I mean, that might not be a bad thing where you have an inexperienced linebacker coach like Chris Claiborne, who's coaching under Todd Orlando, who really coaches the linebackers. I think a very similar thing happened to Chris Hawkins, who went to Arizona State, where you have a defensive coordinator that's like a safeties coach, basically, and you bring in, or a secondary coach, and Chris Hawkins can come in and kind of know. He might be the secondary coach, but your DC is really the secondary coach. He can come in and learn under that. So there might be it's a potential situation there, but my understanding is there hasn't been a whole lot of talk about, communication there, at least yet.
in that sense, Gabriel on Facebook says, could Orlando bring any consultants with him?
Interesting on the consultants.
Definitely could be. I mean,
Yeah.
You saw when Graham Harrell came, John David Baker came with him. So we haven't heard any names yet. At least I have not. So still to be determined. I think this. Well, let's wait and see when the staff is finalized before we get to the consultant portion or the analyst portion as well. But yeah, that's always a possibility. You know, a guy that you just have a buddy in the business, and you say, Ryan's looking for a gig too. Well, all we got is an analyst. We can't pay him much. He just wants to be in the building type of thing. And then, John David Baker comes in, and then suddenly you decide to actually have an inside receivers coach like you should have last year.
Right.
And he becomes the guy.
And the fact that John David Baker was promoted, that might help bring in someone like, hey, and you can go in there and you become a coach soon. So
Not just him, Joe DeForest.
Joe DeForest did as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Kerry Colbert.
When it comes to
you, Daisy. I mean, this is not a new trend at USC.
yeah, that's a good point. Ryan, you look like you're about to have some Periscope.
No, they like to promote from within.
Yes.
What Keith said, do you think Pallier needs to lean up? I kind of like the where he is. I don't know. I didn't like his position last year, but as far as being leaner, I mean, I think.
He's a guy who gets banged up a little bit. Wouldn't you want some more meat on your body? Just a little bit?
Yeah, I just think he's gonna be in a better spot. I think you're gonna see some good things out of him just because Todd Orlando's a linebacker guy, and he's not gonna let a talent like Pallier just not be as productive as he really should be.
Yeah. When it comes to, we're a little bit away from spring camp, but when it comes to watching this defense, what are the first things you're going to look for when you're trying to figure out what this defense is in practice? Like, where are you looking for linebackers? Are you looking for the line?
I think you got to look at the linebackers and how they're, because it just seems like they were like a, an afterthought almost sometimes in this defense. I just want to see what that kind of lineup would be, where those guys are going to play. What's Drake Jackson's role going to be? The rotation on the defensive line, what they're doing in the secondary, and if there's going to be some kind of rover dude that's the Sua Cravens of of that defense, and they're just going to let some guy go around and just go crazy and make tackles all over the place.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing is positioning, where guys are and what positions are being lined up on the field. That's the first and foremost that you want to see on the defensive side. Just what exactly are they trying to do initially?
Yep. Let's jump into questions. First off, Mike on YouTube says, if USC only loses by 14 against Bama, will it be seen as an improvement, a step in the right direction, ?
I think it will come down to the eye test. If you're down 28 and you score 2 garbage touchdowns, then no. But if you're down 7 and on a Hail Mary at the end and they run it back or something, then yeah, it can be, the perception can be way different on based on a touchdown swing or something like that. So I think it's all about how they play. If people see them and they're like, wow, USC actually looks competitive in this game, even if they end up losing by 14 or 17, like there are a late score or whatnot, then people go, okay,
yeah,
I'll have to keep my eye
on a pretty good team. Yeah.
I'll have to keep my eye on USC going forward. We know they got talent. Now it looks like they're playing pretty well. So I think that would be it.
Yeah, 52-6 a few years ago. That was not
46-point difference is a little bit different than 14.
Right. You just don't look at that as like, that wasn't a really competitive team. So
and they looked good in the first half.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a lead in like the second quarter. Like it was 3-0, like middle of second quarter or something,
And they had opportunities they didn't convert on, and that's the difference in those big games. Is do you connect on that pass down the left sideline on play action to Darius Rogers on the first drive, and suddenly it's 7-0.
That memory.
Then you start, then you get the momentum going, and things can be completely different. But when you're a team that's a little bit away, and that team was the beginning of the season, that's the type of plays you don't make.
Yep. Yeah. Bobby on Facebook says, will we see any major bumps in the strength and conditioning program this year? AA will have a full offseason. Does he have a budget to bring in a drill instructor, hopefully a Marine, to change the culture and teach leadership?
I haven't heard of any budgets for Marine drill instructors, but, I think now, he came in last year, which was like around the springtime trying to get everything going. Now it'll be a full year in his system. So, yeah, I think it'll be a little smoother this year than last, but I haven't heard of any budgetary, stipulations for a drill instructor. I didn't know that was something that was wanted or needed.
Yeah, there's just different things you can do. You can do the Marine training and stuff on the beach and whatnot. And usually you bring in an outside hired hand to help out with those type of things. But maybe they do something like that. USC has done different beach work and stuff in the past to kind of mix it up. But I think you're just, from the talk of the players last year, I just think you're going to see some gains that you weren't seeing in the previous years. I think that there's just more of a focus on lifting heavy and getting stronger than there was previously. So I think you're going to see some of those type gains. The players were very receptive to Aaron Osmus last year, and he got in late last year, so he didn't even have a full off season. Now he does have the full off season. I think just from listening to the players and their comparison of the two strength and conditioning coaching staffs, I think it's a positive, Aaron Osmus having a full offseason.
Yeah, follow him on Instagram. You can see some big, thick steaks and squatting 3,000 pounds or whatever they're doing. Like some crazy stuff.
3,000 exactly.
It's like, yeah, I mean, how many plates are they putting on those things? You're like, holy crap,
Yeah,
man.
no, it's intense. John on Facebook says, is it possible that USC is beginning to simply de-emphasize football as part of an overall campaign to bring USC in line with other quote-unquote woke institutions on the West Coast?
No, I don't buy that. I think there's really just been incompetence. I don't think I don't think they were trying to be bad. They were incompetent and became bad. So yeah, you'd have to give them. They'd have to be really good at their jobs to try to figure out a way to de-emphasize football. And I'm not going to give them credit for being the leadership being really good at their jobs.
It's like, are they really, really smart or just not good at what they do?
But I
think the more likely case there is that they're just not good at what they've done the last decade. Is the football program focus?
That's
No. I don't think they're necessarily trying to de-emphasize it, but I just think that once Carroll was gone, Pete Carroll, not Carroll Folk, once Carroll was gone,
got people excited
they
there.
just were not going to invest the same way, and that's kind of been the big question mark. Are they willing to invest to have the program keep up with everyone else? So maybe in that standard, maybe you could say they de-emphasized it?
I would say with Pete Carroll, they still weren't investing all that much at the time, but you got
True.
you
Talk
just
about
had
the weight room and
you had an alpha coach that was just really freaking good at his job. They recruited like nobody's business. They were everywhere, and Pete Carroll made that work, even though you had deficiencies all around you. And the Pac-12 wasn't that good at the time, and all. I think there was a lot of factors in play, and I think the administration kept feeling like you could just keep doing that with like mediocre coaches, and it just and the game has changed. And if you brought Pete Carroll back, he probably would still be very competitive, even without some of the support staff and everything. But you can't have mediocre coaches and not supporting them and building them up with their support staff all around them either. So I think you bring in Urban Meyer. I mean, he's going to make you make changes, but he's going to just do things so much better than everyone, and he'll win a bunch of games. But you can't bring in people that are just like they're okay at their job and don't give them all the resources that Dabo Swinney would have or Ed Orgeron would have or all that and be competitive. So it's sort of like every school needs to put more effort in. USC just didn't have to before, and they won with Pete Carroll. But you can't do it half-assed and win in modern football unless you have like an amazing head coach, and USC hasn't had that.
I feel like they didn't feel they had to invest as much to still get the same returns.
Yes.
And I think that they've seen, especially the last year and a half, 2 years, that if we don't start investing the resources, then we're not going to get the same returns. And obviously football pays for a lot of other things most of the time. Most programs, work on the football program as a whole has a net positive.
Yeah.
There's some smaller schools that doesn't happen. But I think USC is starting to realize, at least you would hope they are, that if they don't invest in the football program, then the returns are not the same anymore.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's jump into our caller queue. They've been waiting patiently. First up is Michael from Phoenix, which I know Michael from Phoenix. Hello, you're live on television.
Hey, Keely, thank you for taking my call. Enjoy listening in, and I enjoy following all of you on Twitter. But my question was simple. I thought, first of all, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to ask my question. I thought Graham Harrell was a goner as Cliff Kingsbury left. And my question to you is, do you think that there was a backdoor deal letting him know that if for whatever reason they have to make a coaching change in season, that he would replace Helton as the next head coach at SC? Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Michael. Interesting. Yeah, he was offered a lot more money to go to Texas. I think that was the only offer he had. Like he interviewed at UNLV.
Interview with the Eagles.
Yeah, the Eagles. I don't think he got those jobs, but it did show. He was at North Texas doing good things. You come on a much bigger stage, and it's going to be a popular, choice. And, Tom Herman went after him. I think there was some issues there. So I don't think there was any sort of backdoor deal for something like that. But nothing that I've heard of. But that I think if you're Graham Harrell, you might think of that. You look around, who's going to take over if Clay Helton does get fired midseason? USC's fired their last two coaches midseason. There was definitely opportunities for that to happen too. Who's going to be the big name? Would you have made John Baxter or Clancy Pendergast the head coach? Are you going to make the new DC Todd Orlando? I'm just not sure. It probably would be him, I would guess. It's not like you have this super robust staff that there's someone that you would have to name the next, the interim head coach.
Let's see if when they finish the staff, then we can discuss that probably a little bit better. But I think that's more so than it being hinted at or being backroomed or written down on a piece of paper and slid over type of thing. I think is Graham Harrell probably looks at it and goes, I got a good chance at this, especially because I've taken these other interviews. And I say all along that you should always go through the interview process because even if it's not – I don't think it was the right time for him to be a head coach right now. I don't know that he's ready for that responsibility. However, I think going through the process prepares him So if next year he is ready and a Texas Tech job opens up and he wants to go home to his alma mater, he has that experience. Now he can sell himself that much better because of the experience of being in that interview process. It's something he definitely should have done.
Yeah.
I'm curious if Mike Bohn would be aware of the history of what happens when you put a charismatic interim guy, what happens there with USC. Because I've always thought it would be Mike Jinks, just so if you don't get your hands tied a little bit where you have another player-based hiring candidacy.
He's the former head coach, and USC got the last 2 interims wrong with their decisions, so the third time could be a charm. Maybe they get this one right, whatever they got to do.
You heard it here first, folks. Ryan's advocating for it. No, I'm just kidding.
No, they made the wrong decisions when it came to interim coaches the last 2 times. We'll see if that happens this time.
We shall see. Thank you, Michael, for the call. I thought it was Michael Castillo, but it wasn't. Let's go to Jeff from Connecticut. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hello there. I found Shotgun's comments on Clancy Pendergast's preference for speed interesting, but the contrast between that and the lack of speed on the ends this past year and the number of times that the edges were, people went around the edges. Do you think, for example, Rector obviously lacked enough speed to stop that. Do you think that Jackson has the speed to be able to play that position in the same way that, we see it played with these top NFL teams, the kind of guys they have on the edge?
Thanks for the question. I think there was probably a lack of speed with Christian Rector, but on Drake Jackson's side, he's got plenty of speed. I think it was more scheme and discipline of what they were doing as opposed to just speed. Like that's why they would let those outside runs.
I think the guys on the edge, the defensive ends in this case, got more blame for that than maybe is necessarily on them. The way that USC played their defense, a lot of times it's supposed to be the linebacker that spills over. You hold the edge, the next guy comes over the top, or the cornerback or nickelback or safety is supposed to be coming up there. So it's not always on them. Now, like the reverse that happened at whatever game it was, I think Notre Dame against Christian Rector, that was all him. He should have been there. He got his head turned. And sometimes that was the case. There was misdirection, and the guy at the second level wasn't necessarily getting over the top. So you're trying to hold the edge. And, guys try to do as much as they can. You try to hold the edge and then go and make the play yourself. But it's not always on the defensive end. So I think it's how you play the defense. The way that Todd Orlando had them playing at Texas last year is those defensive ends were inside a little bit, and everything they wanted to funnel it out to the outside, and those speedy guys on the outside are supposed to be coming up to make the tackles.
Yeah.
So do you blame the defensive ends if they don't make the play on that and they give up the edge? Well, in that, it just kind of depends on how you're mapping it out as a defensive coordinator. There's 2 different ways to do it. You can be really wide and force everything in, or you can be inside and force everything out and have your outside guys come up. So I think it was a lot of times that the defensive ends were getting a little bit more. USC was terrible on the edge as a whole, but I think that they got a little bit more discredit than maybe they should have in some situations. I don't think that they were asking those guys to be really speedy and be the guys that just cut off everything and forced it back in. I think that they were trying to get the linebackers to come over the top and let them run a little bit more.
Yeah, Iowa exploited the outside a little bit. What did you say?
Misdirections.
Yeah.
And USC struggled with misdirections all last season.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
And they just kept doing it.
Yeah. And those are the type of ones that you wonder, the jet sweeps and stuff, like that's when there needs to be an adjustment where you're telling the defensive end is, hey, get upfield and force them to come back inside, but they never did that. So that's one of those type things where I haven't specifically asked about it, but it makes me think that you're wanting your faster defenders, your linebackers, your nickelbacks, they are supposed to be the ones to come up and make that play rather than defensive end. Because otherwise you would see the defensive end, instead of going towards the quarterback, just go straight upfield.
Yeah.
And then kind of try to curve
disrupt it.
To be a different type of edge defender.
Thanks for the call, Jeff. We appreciate it. It's already 8:20. Surprisingly.
How did that happen?
Right? I know. We were like, we're going to need more questions.
We don't even know what we're going to talk about today, and it's just like, boom, you just keep. But it's great. The awesome questions.
Yeah.
We do appreciate all of you sending in or calling in.
And we're going to get to them. So let's do some rapid fire, gentlemen.
Yes.
Start your engines, but be faster. Mike, speaking of speed, says, which one of the linebackers are the fastest?
Who do you think? Pallier?
Are we counting outside linebackers?
Yeah.
So then you're going to,
I don't know, just is it straight line speed? Maybe Hunter Echols?
He's pretty fast.
his dad can weigh in.
Falanico.
Kanai?
Falanico?
Kanai?
No, not Kanai.
He's not as fast as
Falanico was a safety in high school, so maybe him.
He could be.
It's kind of hard. You're not really judging those guys on straight line speed usually. It's how well you can navigate traffic a lot of times.
Yeah.
That speed is so much more coveted than just straight line speed, and it's really hard to kind of measure that one, unfortunately.
And there's a lot of instincts, too, where you're just in a better position. You might be 3 feet over, and you're going to get to the spot because you knew the right place to start as opposed to I ran over, you had to make it up with speed.
Like EA, when he's going well, like when in high school, the instincts were so well that he just seemed to be there so much quicker than anyone else. So his speed kind of plays up, I think. And I think you could put him in speediest linebacker. He's not the fastest, but he might be the speediest.
Speaking of speed, a different type of speed, Tony on YouTube says, can USC have 2 running back 1,000-yard season next season?
Sure,
Tony.
But it's not going to happen.
No.
Anything is
that would be kind
possible.
of maybe I'll do a little bit of research and see if that's happened in an air raid offense.
That would be, because you've seen one guy have a lot of success.
Mm-hmm. Usually, just because you don't use them as much, it's not like you're okay. Well, that guy's wearing down. We got to get the co-opt back in there with him. To get in and get a bunch of carries.
You could see 3 wide receivers maybe catch 1,000 yards or something. Like you saw 4 get 100 in a game, but to have 2 running backs, I don't know.
We have a resident UCLA fan in Jesse, but we now have a resident Notre Dame fan, I believe. Coley says, as USC people, which game on this year's schedule is the must-win game? Bama, Notre Dame, UCLA, etc. Thank you, and go Irish.
As USC people.
Utah is the must-win game.
I might go Notre Dame. That's like ending the season. Like you lose to Notre Dame.
If USC is already banked it for the Pac-12 championship, people will look at that and be like, yeah.
No, but that's where you have to be. So that's where I think the expectations for this year are going to be different. Like if you're 9-3 and you lose to Oregon, Alabama, and Notre Dame, and you win the Pac-12 South, I don't think that's going to be good enough. You got to beat some of the elite teams on the schedule. So I'm saying Notre Dame, just for our resident Notre Dame fan.
You got to get to the Pac-12 championship if you want a chance at the college football playoff. The best way to do that is being in Utah. So
I'm done talking about winning the Pac-12 South. Screw it. Who cares? What are you talking about winning the Pac-12 South? Go beat Notre Dame. Go beat Alabama. That's what I want to see.
Interesting.
Last year
what's
I said
your
Utah.
ultimate goal? Is your ultimate goal to get one win? One big win?
If you beat those teams, you're going to beat the other ones. Then the other ones don't matter.
You could argue Bama then by that logic.
Yeah, Utah's losing everybody. No, beat Notre Dame.
Whatever.
Anyway, Racer X on YouTube says, do you see any of the UCLA transfers getting picked up by SC?
Racer X, I was wearing my Mach 5, Speed Racer shirt last week.
I think Theo Howard was a guy that he was looking at USC.
Yeah.
They were looking at him. He ends up at Oklahoma. The other name that's kind of interesting is Chris Murray from Modern Day. Does he fit in anywhere at USC? Is that a possibility? I don't know that. I can't remember.
People thought he was going to commit to USC, or he was kind of committed. He was going to be. It was like the Army All-American Bowl, and he was maybe going to commit to USC and end up going to UCLA. There was a whole weird thing going on with him.
I don't think USC wanted him at that point.
Yeah, there was some weird stuff.
So I don't know if he's a grad transfer or not. I don't think USC is taking anybody from UCLA that's not a grad transfer at minimum. If at all, anybody.
Mike says, Devil's advocate here. Who should Helton get credit for developing? Since so many people say he can't develop, does he get credit for developing Slovis, a 3-star, and he's playing like a 5-star? Any others?
Well, I think you got to go Graham Harrell with that. That's anything with the offense last year. You took Clay Helton away from it, and you put Graham Harrell in it. So I wouldn't say you get the credit for developing Keaton Slovis.
What does Slovis look like in the gumbo?
Unfortunately, Clay Helton's never been the position coach, the guy directly involved with anyone that just has taken off and has been you got to give that guy credit for. It's not. He's never been the Joe Brady. Joe Brady comes in and you go, wow, look what Joe Burrow is doing now with Brady there. That hasn't happened with Clay Helton.
Yeah.
Kay says, whose autographs are on the helmet that's in front of Ryan and Shotgun?
Juju, because this was the Juju Smith Foundation, right?
Yeah, but there's a whole bunch of dudes
Clay
over there.
He's the one that stares at me the most.
Yeah, there was Anthony
I always see the ones
Munoz.
at the front.
Anthony Munoz is on there.
Yeah,
There's a
he's
whole
the one
bunch
at
of
the
dudes.
front.
Yeah.
So USC legends. That's the question.
Was it the guy, the linebacker in the 50s that basically integrated for the Texas game? C.R. Roberts. He signed the top of this. So, yeah, there was some good stuff on there.
Tony says, what's up with Brew McCoy?
Brew.
He's
happy
practicing
and healthy.
during bowl practices.
Yeah, he was doing some practice. He's doing their conditioning and stuff. Looks like he should be good to go in the spring. And, I think he's going to be a guy that everybody's kind of watching and wanting to see on the offensive side.
Yeah.
Ulau says, Shotgun, which position group would you say has taken the biggest leap from last season to now? Just the guys on the team, not the guys leaving. Let me know if I need to clarify.
I would say the defensive backs, just because they lost so many guys last year. And then there was another question that was similar that was asking about Burns and what I think of him. I think he's done a really good job with a young position group to have them ready. But it wasn't just that they were ready. It was that there were a lot of guys that had to be thrown in there because of injuries that they had. You had Britton Allen go in late in the Colorado game for, Isaiah Pulmau wasn't playing very well, but you had Talanoa get hurt a couple times. You had, your cornerbacks having to mix them up. So I think that they did a really good job, especially with the circumstances they had of losing, was it 5 or 6 guys the previous season, and then also the injuries they had this season with all young guys. There was 2 upperclassmen last season, I think it was.
Keith on Periscope, over under Daniel Matorbebe 500 receiving yards.
Oh, my gosh.
Under.
He needs to be eligible for a 6th year.
Yeah.
First.
I mean, that's like, to get over 500 yards, like a lot of things are going to have to go right. And it just seems like there's a lot of things that would make that not happen. So,
Jasper Smith says, for the 2021 class, which positions are must-gets?
I think you still need a dominant offensive lineman. You need a star offensive lineman. They just have not had one of those in the last couple classes. So that would be a big one.
I think you're interior defensive lineman, probably trying to replace some of those guys.
The easy answer is quarterback.
Yeah.
You do have Jay Garcia right now, but getting that signed, sealed, and delivered, especially if you don't get a 2020, because you just don't want to be down to two scholarship quarterbacks. So that's an easy one. Running back is also a big one if you don't get one as well.
Right.
So.
If you don't get one this cycle, then it's going to be running back's a big one too.
Jasper also says, any future guests on Tunnel Vision that we can look forward to?
We'll set some things up for sure in this offseason. We had Gavin Morris. We had Aaron Osmus last time. So we'll try to get maybe a position coach or something. We really tried to get Graham Harrell last year, and it didn't work out. But I think we'll be able to get him this year. So, yeah, we'll do some guests and stuff. We'll get Taylor May to come back on. Maybe some other former players and stuff. Maybe some other writers. I don't know. Whatever. If you guys have ideas for people you want, we're definitely open.
In the comments.
Circling back real quick.
Yes.
Drake London finished with 567 receiving yards. That's the position Daniel Moore-Baby would be playing, and Drake London didn't play a lot of the first half of the season, just what they were trying to do. So if they go spread wide and he's actually in there, it's a possibility.
But Drake London's still there. So
Drake London might bump out to the outside without Michael Pittman.
He could.
So there's a bunch of variables. I don't think it'll happen, but I'm just giving you the devil's advocate that maybe.
Yeah.
Jacob Atkins, as far as quarterback talk says, are there any QB targets to bring on for the 2020 class? I don't see JT being healthy until mid-late season, which leaves Matty Fink as our sole backup.
They are recruiting Blake Shapen, the dual sport athlete from Shreveport, Louisiana. He just had his official visit. Seemed like things went well. Check out the Peristyle. We had an update on his visit there, so you can check out and see exactly how that went. And if they can sign him, then that's a guy they get in, and the baseball team also adds a dynamic player, potential top 100, top 50 guy to the baseball team as well.
John on Facebook says, in your opinion, if SC loses to Alabama in a similar fashion as in 2016, does Helton get fired and will Graham become the interim?
Not after one game. I mean, I said this during our podcast with Dan Weber.
Yeah.
If I'm the athletic director, I go, all right, you probably shouldn't have been back. Go beat Alabama, or you'll be fired. So I mean,
that logic thing that makes
doesn't
no
make any sense.
to me.
Come on,
no.
go beat Alabama. That's what I'm looking at this season. Like, beat Alabama, beat Notre Dame. That's what I want to see. If you do that, then everything else is going to work. Stop talking about the Pac-12 South.
Jasper Smith says, assuming no health issues, who makes a bigger impact next year, Brew McCoy or Kyle Ford?
Brew McCoy.
Ooh, I love Kyle Ford, though. Yeah, I think it'll probably be Brew McCoy.
They're both 5-star guys for a reason.
Yeah.
Especially if Todd Orlando, because he has a relationship already, was recruiting
Brew
Brew
McCoy.
McCoy as well,
Nice one.
says, hey, we're going to use you on third down packages.
Ooh,
Which would
that
be
would
fun.
be fun. AVS says, was Todd O the DC for the Utah bowl game, or was he fired already?
He was fired already. Yeah, they used a similar scheme that they did for the I think they played Texas Tech the previous game, and they really played well when they moved the outside line, the outside guys more outside the tackles, like I said. So they did a very similar thing in the bowl game and really just beat up on Utah.
P. Luke says, if the new DC has complete control of the defense and the OC has complete control of the offense, what exactly is Clay Helton's job?
Special team? I mean, no.
CEO, and that's what most coaches do.
Yeah.
95% of the coaches, their job is to be the CEO. You make the play calls on whether you run a trick play or not, whether you go for it on fourth down, those type things, but you don't run the offense or defense. There's very few coaches that do that and do it successfully.
Penalties and turnovers.
I mean,
Didn't go well.
No.
Zashawn on YouTube says,
don't talk about it, be about it. Let's go.
what's the transfer count since Clay has been the head coach?
Oh, God, I'd have to look at it. There's been a bunch, but there's a bunch for most schools. I mean,
Yeah,
And there's a
'cause
lot of reasons.
yeah.
You got to look at like Stanford or
UCLA.
Look at what they're having right now. Where UCLA's got like 14 people in there. I think it is.
Yeah, Stanford has like 12 or something. Stanford will get some of them back, and Stanford's a weird situation because it's hard to do grad school there and stuff. But yeah, there's been a bunch, but I think it's happened in a lot of schools, and there's other schools in the Pac-12 that have more than USC.
Mike says, what's the percentage probability that SC can get Corey Foreman to decommit and join USC if USC's defense looks good this year?
Not high.
It's going to be tough, and especially because I had just been on the phone with Bo Collins, who also committed to Clemson this past week, and one of the things we were talking about is Clemson is kind of like Chris Peterson was at Washington. Once you commit, they expect you to be a commit. They don't want you taking a bunch of official visits and stuff, and sometimes that's tough for kids, and they don't want to do that, so they wait a little while on it. But a lot of them, and what Bo Collins actually told me is that he's like, you respect the program, and if you want to decide to make that commitment, then you're willing to respect the program, decide not to take those visits as well.
Yeah.
So he said he's pretty much shutting down his recruitment. We'll see if Corey Foreman does something similar there, but if USC wins 10 or 11 games, things might change a little bit.
It could.
It always happens where, especially going all the way across the country, if there's a really, really good option right beside home, it makes it that much more difficult.
The problem is, and I'm going to do a deep dive into USC's kind of recruiting woes. I talked to a lot of recruiting experts about it. You're seeing a change now where before USC could switch those guys at the end. Now with the early signing period, it's really hard. When you're committing outside, when DJ committed to Clemson, he was pretty much shutting things down. When Bryce Young flipped to Alabama, he shut things down. He wasn't coming to visit. They weren't even going to like USC games as the local 5-star quarterback. So it's a different landscape now. And because USC hasn't had their act together and you've let these guys go away, even if you get it together late, I think it's going to be really hard to flip these guys. You needed to have your act together now and not let them commit elsewhere. And now that they've done that, I think it's going to be really tough to get them back.
Trek Ranger says, who's the most violent linebacker?
Probably
Yeah, he would be.
Solo in this solo practice had some good pops.
Solo's good.
Hey, ask LaVisca Chenault that question.
Yes.
That's a good point. People are guessing the hat of choice for shotgun. Everyone put their guesses in.
It's actually a custom Atlanta Braves.
Yeah.
A shotgun. They were supposed to guess.
They guessed. They didn't get it.
If you don't know, just say Atlanta Braves and you'll probably be right.
Yeah, that's
a good chance.
That's a good point. Kay said, what are the chances that Clay Helton would come on Tunnel Vision?
Oh, he's come on. Well, we've had him on a live version of this before when we were at
2 years ago.
Trader Joe's.
But that was when things were going positively, so it might be a little bit more difficult.
It might be. I think that would be tougher at this point. And, honestly, we have him on. He's going to say a lot of the same things you've seen in the press conferences, and it's just going to make fans upset anyway. So I don't think they'll get the satisfaction, I guess you would say, of having something like that. So if he turns things around and they're winning, I think he might want to come on and get the publicity. But until that happens, I don't think he would be coming on at this point. It probably wouldn't be smart for him to do it anyway.
XX says, is USC on the verge of being the school that is okay with winning at least 6 games? Is USC turning into the school that is happy with just a bowl appearance?
No. Again, incompetence has caused that, not that's what it's going to be okay. And I especially think with the new athletic directors there, they want to win. So, yeah, I don't think that's going to be the case.
Mike asked a question that I think we've all taken a break from trying to predict or answer, but he says, what's the earliest you could imagine Clay Helton being fired next season? After how many losses would 2 horrible losses do it?
I mean, we don't know. It's a new athletic director. It's just like we said, we don't know. It's Lynn Swann. I mean, I think it would start with a horrible loss to Alabama.
But you lose to New Mexico after that?
Okay, well, yeah, like something like that. Like that's. But, you know, we had people on the podcast talking about, you have Stanford early, you have Arizona State at home early, ASU's, you know, they're on the rise. Yeah, I mean, I think there could be the bad Alabama loss with a bad, like, home loss to Arizona State. At Stanford.
At Utah after that on a Friday.
Yep.
Yeah, see that, like, at Utah is probably not going to hurt you as much, but you lose at home to Arizona State.
If you're at that point, you're 1-3 or 2-2, and then you go lose and you're 2-3.
Yeah, then there's some positive. But if there was like 2, I mean, I think New Mexico, you know, if you lose back to back, if you start 0-2, I mean, what reasons would you have to keep Clay Helton at that point? Like there wouldn't be any. But there's been plenty of reasons to fire him before, and that hasn't happened. So yeah, I'm out of the predicting of when Clay Helton is going to be fired because
I tried to warn you.
It's just, you know.
Coley says most dangerous / underrated team in the Pac-12, ASU, Cal? ?
Probably Cal. I mean, I don't know. I think Cal because there's better teams in the North. ASU in the South, like they might be the favorite going into the season outside of USC because Utah's taken a step back. But Cal could be that sneaky team in the North because you think Washington's going to be good. You think, you know, Oregon's still going to be really good. But Cal, I think, could be, you know, pretty good up there. I don't know. They're not. I wouldn't pick them over Oregon, but if Chase Garber stays healthy all season, I think they could be a really effective team.
Good defense and Chase Garber's, you know, experience at a quarterback position.
Yeah.
Chris says, is it time to remove the Cardinal collars from the away jerseys?
No, there's so many other issues at USC. Let's not worry about that. And I think it looks better with the Cardinal, anyways.
I don't even know there was Cardinal collars
on the away jerseys, the white ones.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't notice those things. Some people really care about it.
People notice the socks. Mitchell says, question, Ryan, have you ever gotten feedback from USC football staff and or athletic department staff about your snarky comments? They're hilarious. Keep dropping bombs.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure.
All the time.
We've had people talk. Yeah, people that, you know, they don't really appreciate things. And I think we just want to try to be fair. And, you know, sometimes they would be right. Like sometimes you get on a little bit of a roll, and Keely will point it out.
You get on a little bit of a roll. He's like giving himself credit over here. Like, oh, I just get on a roll. I'm just cruising over here.
Not in a positive way. You know, like there's like snark, and you're like, oh, I'm on a roll. Like, go snark me a little bit more. And you know, I just want to be fair. But the problem is USC's screwed up so badly. Like I think most of the stuff is fair game. Because like, man, there are a lot of really bad decisions that have been made, and you know, we just kind of point them out. But yes, they've commented.
Sometimes I'm the bumper rails, like in bowling for you a little bit.
Yeah, you could
like,
put up the bumpers and like, maybe don't say that.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Kip says, is there enough offensive tackle in the portal that is a good fit for USC? Now, this is something Shock and I debated in the Family Feud pod. Plug. He doesn't think that offensive line recruit would want to come to USC out of the portal.
I said that I don't know that anyone would want to come to USC with their current recruiting if they can convince anyone to come to USC.
I think you could get a grad transfer if you're like a starting left tackle, and like there's an open spot there.
What if there's an open spot at a different school?
Yeah, but I mean, you know, this is going to be a good offense, and
what if
Drew Richmond comes in and does well? Like, you know, I think there's opportunities there.
I think there's other schools. I think there's 58 schools that are currently ranked ahead of USC in the recruiting class. You know, maybe one of those 58 schools has a left tackle spot, and they can recruit better.
Right.
My point was they're struggling with recruiting so much, and there's no positive energy. I think it's that much more difficult to bring in a grad transfer, just like a high school recruit.
I would say that USC has a good opportunity this season, even though Clay Helton's on the hot seat and all that stuff. It's still a really talented team, and the offense is going to go. If you could step in and be the left tackle for a really good team, that might help you if you're better there than you'd go to like UTEP or something.
See, okay, this is the
I'm not
debate.
talking about UTEP. I'm talking about
But this is the debate that Shotgun and I got in from this point of that tangent. What, in your opinion, Ryan, is there more optimism this offseason than last season?
I don't know about. There's not going to be more optimism. The fans are just over everything, but this team really could be like better. And no one wants to hear that because it's still Clay Helton and stuff. But the rest of the Pac-12 is down. The offense you showed went from where it was to a top 5 passing offense, and I think the defense will be better. Special teams will probably be better. It's still really talented. So
Meaning, if you're a recruit and you say you were 2018 going to come into this offseason, last offseason versus this offseason, which looks better, this offseason or this last offseason? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's tough. The problem is, I think you're good. USC could be good for 1 year the way they're going. Like the 2020 could be a pretty good team, but I think there's going to be drop off because of the recruiting stuff. So
the question is, how much research is a grad transfer putting in? I think that will play into it too. How much do they know about USC just overall? Can USC sell the message? And that's where I think there's an issue. They're struggling to sell their message to high school kids. So I think that, I think it correlates, with grad transfers as well. Now, if you can sell, look, this spot's yours. Look at what our offense did last year. We're going to do this again. There are things to sell. However, there's been things to sell to offensive linemen all season, and how many 4 or 5 star guys did they get?
Yeah, they didn't get any. I'm agreeing with Keely though. I think that the transfer portal is going to be different. If there's a good left tackle option, I don't think USC is not that good is going to be the reason why they wouldn't come.
Well, I use Shotgun's motto against him because he always says if they're a competitor, they're going to think, hey, I can add to this. I can do well in this situation.
See, me even saying, like, I think USC could be pretty good this year, people are commenting, like, no, it's Helton, that you can't do it. Like, yes, okay, I've said Clay Helton should have been fired for the last 2 years. But the team that's going to be assembled in 2020, I just have a feeling it's going to be pretty good. And Todd Orlando will get the defense better. We saw Graham Harrell get the offense better. Getting John Baxter out is going to make the special teams better. And maybe Clay Helton is better at the turnovers and penalties, which they were terrible at last year. But this is a talented team, and I think they're going to win a bunch of games because the teams around in the Pac-12 just aren't that good. Now, do you get blown out by Alabama and Oregon and Notre Dame and beat everybody else? Like, that could happen. To me, that's not good enough. Like, this is enough talent on the team that you should beat a couple of those teams.
Yeah.
I will point out that Clayton Bradley's in the transfer portal, right? You need somebody better than Clayton Bradley, right? Yes. So the guys that are ranked, at least in the 2020 class, in the 24/7 Sports, because they do a re-ranking of them, the guys that are ranked above him, DeVries Hamilton from Stanford, this is offensive tackles, J.P. Urquidez from Texas, however, he's not immediately eligible, it doesn't look like, and Juwan Williams, who's not immediately eligible either. So there's one person ranked above Clayton Bradley that's available right now at the offensive tackle position.
Yeah. And that there might be more guys entering later,
sure.
But as of now, I looked before. I didn't see anyone that was like, oh yeah, USC's got to get that.
Or someone that's ranked lower that you think is better. It's still those are possibilities as well.
Yep. We have a tweet from Samuel who says, a question for the show: who's a bigger fan, Keely of the Angels, Shotgun of Hats, or Dan Weber of the Sports Pac-12 Twitter account?
I got to go with Dan.
I think the answer is obvious there. That's Dan.
Yeah. He tweets that all the time, which is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure Dan understands. Like, we tweet a lot of stuff, and we try to get Dan to retweet our stuff, and it doesn't happen. But he loved the Sports Pac-12 stuff, man.
Maybe it's his burner or something like that.
Yeah.
Shotgun, any final questions before we wrap this puppy up?
Mike asked, can Todd Orlando convince any Longhorns to decommit and join at USC? The answer is no, because Texas doesn't have any commits right now. Everyone is either signed or enrolled.
Yeah. There could be some transfer portal guys.
Yes. Transfer portal is much more of a possibility there, and there's a couple of defenders that are in there. The question is it positions USC needs, and are there immediately eligible guys versus guys who are going to have to sit out a year? Those are the type of things you would have to look at. He also asked, do we currently have the badass linebackers to succeed in the Todd Orlando defense?
Yep.
I mean, if they had a Justin Flo, that wouldn't have hurt.
Yes.
But little small tier, just not being able to watch Justin Flo practice.
Yeah, but there's talent there. I mean, you have the Hunter Echols and the Falanicos and Pallier and Solo and Mauga. And there's talented linebackers there. I just
Jordan
felt like,
Iosefa.
yeah,
Everyone's forgotten
he's
about.
back too. So I think there's enough talent there at the linebacker spot, but they've missed out on. I mean, the guys Oregon got are so freaking good.
Yeah.
And
Justin Flo and Noah Sewell are going to be a dynamic duo.
Noah
at the
Sewell
linebackers.
is a stud too, man. Oh god, like
They were really good together, especially at the Los Angeles opening last year.
That was insane.
And I said at the time, I think I told Keely, I was like,
remember.
if somebody could get those two together, and are just it's gonna be scary for whoever has to play them. That's what's gonna happen now in the Pac-12.
And I was like, that would be crazy, and it's a reality.
yeah.
Super OC Holmes, similar, or actually different question. Someone asked, I lost it. Oh, Michael Ford, didn't Orlando flip DeGabriel Floyd, linebacker that USC was committed when he was a freshman or sophomore at USC, eventually ended up at Texas. Unfortunately for him, he had a spinal injury that was, had to retire. But yes, Orlando was in on that, helping him go to Texas as well. So he has recruited some in Southern California.
Yeah.
Super OC asked, did Clancy ever go and get the players going in the weight room? Can't say that I've ever seen that on any of the clips they've shown. No one ever has mentioned it in the past. Like, oh, yeah, Clancy came over and did this while I was working at. No, that doesn't. But you did see Orlando in some of the first clips that that were put out on social media. He was right there in the midst of it. So I think that's a little bit different. And I think that goes back to, like I said, about difference in personalities for professional ranks versus college ranks. I think he's got more of a college personality that helps with those type of things.
And he's out on the road a lot recruiting right now, which I don't remember as much. There's like the in-home visit kind of things that Clancy would do, but not as much going to the different high schools. Yeah.
Michael Ford says McKay Center was rated number 23 as a football facility compared to Oregon's as number 2. How much does that affect recruiting?
I mean, I don't think it has a huge impact on things. I think it's good enough, but the problem is the McKay Center is going to be dated, and there's other people are going to make bigger improvements. Oregon's going to keep doing things. I don't think you just have to do a one-on-one comparison. The problem is the McKay Center is small. It's not big enough to house a huge recruiting staff and everything that it was built for one support staff person. And so how do you handle that? So I think that's going to be a bigger problem. The facility stuff is still nice, like the lockers and all, the indoor practice field and stuff, but you need to have more of a support staff, and I don't think there's enough room to house all those people there.
Mm-hmm.
Coley said, I think it was directed at us, do you want to replace the UC Davis game in 2021 or take the probable easy W?
No, replace it. I think it's terrible.
Tradition.
Yeah. Tradition.
But also, there's no evaluation you can get out of it. If you just beat up on a team, the only way you learn anything from that game is if it's close.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't expect that to be the case.
That would not be a good thing. And then the final question we got was, when's our next show, Mr. Bossman?
So this Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, that's why we're doing. And then tomorrow is the basketball game, Utah in the Galen Center. So make sure you go check that out. So we'll probably do the following Sunday for our next show. The 9th is looking like that. That'll be the Under Armour Camp Day.
Yeah.
Maybe get a Gerard Martinez out here. Maybe it'll be post signing day. I think we'll be a bunch of recruiting talk around then. Maybe that's the Blair Angulo day. Maybe we'll bring Blair in. Yeah. So if Blair's still watching, I'll text you. I'll text with him later and see what's going on. And so I think probably next Sunday is when we'll do the show. So it'll be a little bit of a break.
Yep. So we'll be back in a little while, but thank you guys so much for all your questions. You did a great job, so much so that we almost went 2 hours.
How did we almost go 2 hours on a show?
We didn't think we'd have anything to talk about 3 days later after our last show, so thank you guys for
basically we could do this
that.
Every day and it would work. We could
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but probably.
Someone has to pony up for that to happen.
Yeah, we need a sponsor.
Yeah. If someone will sponsor us, I'll surely do that. But that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for all your calls, your comments. We appreciate it. Like I said, that's Shotgun. That's Ryan. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all in a little while.